Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to go hit the ground running tonight, guys. Table Crashers episode 47. I'm Will Esgro. We're joined tonight by Joe McClintock and Jason Steingisser. They are the designers of Or, the mining game, currently on Kickstarter. So please, if you haven't done so, check that out as we stream today. We are going to basically be discussing all the fun stuff we always discuss. I'm actually happy because I get two designers tonight, and so we get to pick both their brains simultaneously. So here's the plan. The publishers for the game are Quick, Simple, Fun Games, and with Aetherist Games. Unfortunately, the publishers couldn't join us this evening. They had a scheduling conflict, but that's okay. I'm a design rat. You guys know that. So let's start off right. Well, first off, welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for being
here. So what started both of you in game design?
Man, it takes me back. How old do I need to be? 2, 3, 4, 5?
That's fine. Really what it comes down to. And we can parse. So let's start with Jason. You seem pretty excited about this one. So Jason, when did you start in game design?
Oh man, ever since I was like a kid on the playground, I feel like many of us have stories just like that, like we're always the one to, get people together to, do something new or do something different. And that, just kind of carried through, till we, got older. And I remember, I guess what the big funny story is I had, I guess it was a good friend of my parents growing up, and it was his birthday, and I designed a Bucky O'Hare, if you remember this old comic, like board game for him. I don't know how, it was like 7th or 8th birthday. But he was a really good friend, and that was, I don't know, I was just so proud of this, it was like a roll and move game, but it was, I don't know, it was creative at the time. And that, like all through school, it's like projects and everything, if there's an option to do, a game or something instead of, I think I took like a medieval lit course. Jeez, I was lucky. It was
hold on. Let me pause you for a second. You game designed as a project for medieval lit.
Yeah, that was my final project. So listen, no essay, no nothing. I thought like pretty much half the class to play some like knockoff of Advanced Civilization. It was like, so it was that was so that's the long-windedness though. Joe's probably got a better story than that. So
yeah, but I mean that's mega passion. Obviously, if you started early, and I mean that's like eat, sleep, and breathe game design. Now, where did you shuffle from that hobby aspect of it into more professional? Is I guess what I was getting at too.
Man, no, meeting Joe, to be honest, I mean, or I would say it's our first, our only, kind of big foray into, making something come to life, like we have 6 years ago, almost, 6.5 years ago.
I feel like it was a hobby for a while. I think I really started doing it kind of seriously after I graduated college and was kind of, broken without a job and living with my parents. And I was like, I'll start, messing around with games. I feel like that's a pretty typical story. But it really was once Or kind of started working out. I think really when we won BFIG back in 2013.
I'm sorry, what was it that you guys won?
The Boston Festival of Indie Games.
Okay.
They had sort of it was a great convention in Boston for indie games. And yeah, we won Audience Choice that year. And it was kind of rough because then it got to the point that people would just be like, okay, so when can I buy the game? And once people are saying that to you, you can't just be like, oh, it's a hobby. Then you kind of have to follow through.
Right. And that's interesting. Now, did when you guys turned to doing it a little bit more professionally, or at least, the idea of doing it a little more professionally, was it were you, and I'm asking this because I think that this is where a lot of design people end up, you're doing it as a hobby, then something happens with your career that is oh, I can't do this anymore, or, my job's no longer available for me. Is that similar for you guys? Was there that period of time where you were doing it as a hobby, then your main profession sort of got pulled from under you, or is that, I mean, this is a guesstimation based on what I see with other people.
So this is my dream, but no, it hasn't happened, worked that way for me. I feel like, I don't know, Joe. What are your thoughts
There
about
were
it?
definitely a few times that I had big career changes and was kind of like, oh, maybe this is the point in my life where I just start doing board games full time. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I must admit I do not have the amount of dedication that a lot of people in the industry have in order to actually pull that off, because that's
Of
definitely,
course.
you have to put a lot of effort into that.
Right, especially on the design side, because on the
Yeah.
design side, like we talked about before we went to stream, I mean, really, on average, you're looking at about 5% on the back end of what anything that's coming in, and unless you're on an evergreen, that you get lucky enough to hit an evergreen game, then you're not. That's not going to pay the bills. So you're putting out like I'd say minimum 12 to 15, sometimes 30 designs a year to actually be able to make it,
Yeah.
pay the bills, and eat.
Yeah.
And then Joe, with you, where did you start in design? Like when was the earliest you remember designing?
I mean, I think I definitely had sort of a similar story of making a lot of really mediocre roll and move games back in middle school, and definitely with stuff that I just mess around. I think I like I think I've been the kind of person who sort of looks at something and is like, oh, I can do that. And board games are definitely that kind of thing that you play a game and you're like, I can do that.
Yep.
And I don't know, I guess I have, but it definitely, that's the great thing about designing is how sort of low of a barrier there is to get into it. As long as you have some index cards and an idea, you can make something happen.
It's very true. Now, the design you guys had at that Boston design convention, is this what we were seeing today when we crashed the table, or is it something else?
It's a version.
It's an evolution.
Definitely has changed
Evolution,
a lot.
I would say. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
It's also surprising the extent to which there are a lot of similarities between it. But
yeah, like the core mechanics are exactly there, which is really cool to see that.
So, walk us through the evolution of what is now or the mining game. Where did you guys start? Where did the idea come from? What were the intro mechanics? What are some of the things that, in your mind, what are some of the things that started one way and then went a completely different direction? Like some of the things that are the most noted for you. But really, let's just start with where did it start? Where did the idea start?
The game definitely started with I came up with the mechanic of the mines, where it's a worker placement, but instead of just placing it and immediately getting it back, it keeps kind of going down. Yep. That's one that I had that idea and just immediately was like, okay, that's mining. Like,
of course,
the theme kind of forced itself in on the mechanics. From there, we've definitely tweaked a lot of the other things, but that was sort of the core mechanic that has sort of formed the entire game.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because when we did a little test run before tonight's show last night, and the first thing people said was that was the thing that pulled them in the most to the theme. Like the fact that the meeples start at the top of the mine and then they're locked in until you either pay to get them out or they hit the bottom of the mine. Awesome. Like that definitely was the tightest thing to the theme. And now that was the mechanic something you thought of in your head and you're like, this is a cool mechanic, and then you're like, what is this mechanically tied to? And then you came up with the theme, or did you already have the theme of mining in your head when you came up with that mechanic?
I think I thought of the mechanic, the theme just immediately followed, because it just made a lot of sense.
We had some early discussions about, what could this be other than mining? I can't even recall what came out of it, but we just kept coming back to mining. And there's a space mining, right? Yeah. So.
Oh yeah.
Well, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We've had people tell us every variation on space mining or orcs mining or dwarves mining. We're like, nah, it's just mining.
Just plain old mining. And it's funny because it's almost like there was some kismet. I mean, it's taken a while for you guys to get where you are, because you said you guys started this in 2013, correct? Like this journey here. So here we are 6 years later. And now it's sort of coming to fruition. I think a few things had to sort of fall into place, because if you guys were holding so hard and fast to that, it has to be mining. Do you think the re-release of Brass had anything to do with some of the spark and interest in this IP?
thought of it, to be honest. Writing.
Yeah, I just asked because obviously that's kind of a hard sell as an IP. And how many times? I guess here's the next question. Here's the next nice ramp up for you. How many times did you guys shop this out and somebody come back and say, "Do you think you can retheme that? I think I can move more of it if you come up with a different theme for it."
It was twice when I heard this.
I don't know. From publishers, not a lot. I think I've definitely heard a lot of designers tell me like it needs a new theme, it needs a better name. Like,
yeah,
we definitely have gotten a lot of stuff, but there's a certain value in an IP that you've been working on for 6 years. Like, people know the name by now just because we've been to it enough conventions.
Of course, absolutely. No, but I could definitely sympathize with the IP push. That when you had the passion, because I'm obviously you guys tied it to the theme early, and you're like, no, this is what it is. I'm not putting orcs in here. I'm not putting space theme. This is just a simple mining game, which I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, well, and that's one that I think we both sort of like those old school Euro games that have those really dry themes. Like, I mean, if I can play Power Grid and Puerto Rico and be happy with, gathering corn or building electric networks, right. I think people will like mining.
yeah. And you guys and a lot of what you guys came from, so a lot of your influence, both of you, is like in the Euro play style. Like, you guys play a lot of Euros.
Yeah,
for sure, definitely.
Who or what, like, what designer or what game do you feel influenced you the most, not only in this design but as a designer, like moving into the hobby?
Question. I feel like, we're such a hybrid of I feel like a lot of the things we were playing at the time, so games that come to mind, like big names, we were playing a lot of Greek at the time. Lords of Waterdeep, I feel like, was something that Joe through his brother and his friends kind of exposed me to that. So I feel like that was a kind of a big influence. What I loved about Lords was it was kind of, it was worker placement, but it was a little bit of a twist on what, I had seen, previously. And so that at the time was, big favorite of mine. And when we were kind of developing, or I just was hanging kind of, heavy and, kind of what I liked, what I wanted to see, what I, wanted to see it's become. So.
What about you, Joe?
Yeah, definitely similar. Obviously, Lords of Waterdeep is the one that everyone says when they talk about worker placement games.
Well, I think that's true, but I think that's more on the American side of Euro games too. Like, if you talk to an American who talks about worker placement, they're like, "Oh, Lords of Waterdeep, that's my number one." Now, if you talk to somebody who's European or who's from another country, they're usually going to go to one of those German type Euro.
Well, that's one that I think I have to admit, I don't think I've ever won a game of Agricola. I've played it many times. I don't think I've ever won that game. I don't love that game because just God, I'm bad at
it. So what fun and quirky things could you tell me about, like, where some of the mechanics that we see in the game, where they started and what they turned into? So any of the features, we don't have the table up yet. We're going to see that later, but off the top of your head, what do you think changed the most drastically from initial concept to where it is now?
The mines and the contracts are still very same. The sort of buildings have changed substantially over the years.
Okay.
I think that's one that at first they were all just one big pile, and then it kind of became two piles, and then we've tweaked the values, we've changed what they do, and that was definitely the hardest part of the game, is just making those work. Everything else stayed pretty similar. And that's one that Andrew and then also Mike Mihielsick did a lot of work with Quick Simple Fun Games on sort of updating and working with us to kind of bring the game really to final form. And I think he's done a really good job of kind of tying the buildings in with the rest of the game and kind of making it sort of one unified strategy.
So once you guys had a conversation about becoming a part of them publishing you, then the development conversation started, and you felt that the development direction was really solid. It enriched what you guys had already and made it an even better game. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure,
That's
for sure. I feel like
that's
what was. I mean, we.
Go ahead. Sorry,
I was
go ahead.
in kind of from what I've seen, you know, we didn't have a board originally, and it was, you know, always just, you know, a dream to, you know, see something as kind of beautiful as what, you know, was tying everything together. So that was part of the development, and then I feel like everything kind of fell into place through that.
That's pretty awesome. I'm going to actually I'm going to ask real quick. You mentioned that buildings probably changed the most over the period of development and design. One thing that came up during our playtest last night, we were kind of curious. You know, what was the iterations at some point? Were the buildings always in this final form, or, you know, did they ever have an engine mechanic where you put them down and then whatever the building did influence the whole rest of the game, like the rest of the entire game, instead of just being like an initial? Because right now the way the buildings work is you get one of something or an extra action that you would have gotten during the round. But did you ever have it where like something was cheaper because you had a building? Okay, so there was engine building initially, and then that got developed out of it, because I don't see that in there anymore.
It used to be that buildings were sort of like contracts, and that there were always like a set number that were available, and you could buy them at any time.
Oh, okay, so there's an open market for the buildings rather than just a random draw.
Yeah.
And they definitely had a lot of interesting effects. I think one of the hard things was just newer players never understood how to use them, and so it definitely kind of created a gap between people who had played before and people who hadn't, because people didn't fully understand how they worked.
and it's funny, you know, what's hilarious about that is we played within a group of experienced worker placement people last night, and one of the first things that came to their mind was like, I wish these buildings had like an effect I can put down and then let it run the whole game. And I wish there was like an open market I could choose a building from rather than being randomly assigned to me. And so it's funny that you said that like newer players had trouble adapting. I hear home rules coming into my ear here, you know?
Well, we have a lot of fodder for an expansion, maybe.
Yeah.
There it is. But it's funny. So it's funny that your initial design actually was almost in line with what these heavy worker placement guys were expecting, and then it was developed out in a way to make it more approachable for your average game player that maybe isn't adapted to worker placement. So that's interesting. That's very interesting. So I'm going to jump into some general industry questions now, because I mean, you guys are sort of entering the industry right now. I mean, you guys have been you've been orbiting for a while, right? You know, this is your first title that's been picked up by a publisher. Is that correct?
Yeah,
it is.
So you guys are entering like the nitty gritty now. You know, this is like, okay, it's almost that crucial point where, hey, I made a game. Woohoo! What do I do next? Do I go into this a little bit heavier? Do I back away and just be happy that I made a game? But I always ask guests that we have, what do you feel the industry is doing well right now?
That is a great question.
I mean, I think it is great how much the board game industry is very flat. It is nice how sort of accessible it is for people to come and sort of learn how to make a game, and you know, people aren't trying to exclude newcomers, or, you know, I could not think of another industry that is better at just freely sharing information about how to succeed as they do in the board game industry. So
yeah, well said. Just the community that's there is pretty incredible. I mean, all industries have communities, but I mean, I feel blessed to kind of, I don't know, I've met, and I'm, Joe knows well that I'm kind of very tangential kind of at this point, you know, stepping in and out and back and out again and back in, and just to, you know, be always, you know, welcome with open arms is really,
And it's interesting that you said it because I think you're right. You know, the industry itself is flat. There's some dynamics emerging over these last couple of years, but they're at the core. Almost everyone connected within the industry is still has that personality and outlook that, hey, we're here together to grow this hobby space into something even bigger and better. You know, I'm sure you guys could say the same thing, but I've never encountered a designer or publisher that ever like snuffed me in a way that was just like, you know, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to give you my 2 minutes because I'm too important for you. I've never like really ever run into that in this industry, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So on the other side of the coin, where do you believe the industry can improve?
I don't know if this is a true negative, but you know, tabletop simulator is something that, you know, was brought to my attention just now, and having, you know, it's interesting. I think it's interesting because, yeah, you know, Joe and I, we were both in Boston together for a few years when, you know, we're developing the game, but I, you know, I since moved away, and even though, you know, I'm an hour or so away, you know, I got married, had a kid, and I just kind of stepped out of the scene. And if something like the simulator were, you know, around, I would not have stepped out of the scene.
Right.
Disagree, but I think that's kind of neat. So it's I think maybe where improvement could be had, and, you know, maybe I'm just, you know, kind of behind the, you know, but I just feel like kind of bringing folks together, you know, virtually, using something that, you know, approximates like the experience without getting, you know, too video gamey, I think is pretty awesome. And I think it's only going to grow, you know, just the physical market, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And tied into that, I will tell you, if you mentioned you're out of the loop on that. There's a lot of hesitation of people uploading games onto Tabletop Simulator initially. And there's obviously, you don't want to do anything without anybody's permission, but many of these modules, these free modules, are created in tandem with publishers or designers, and they basically get permission, and then, you know, the art assets are usually directly from them, so because then that's why it looks as nice as it does. And almost everybody who's designing these modules, the workshop items, are either doing it as volunteers, or they set up a little bit of side business, but there's nothing truly professional about it. So like almost all these amazing mods you're seeing and implementations of the games that you see on Tabletop Sim are from somebody volunteering their time to do that, and that's how passionate they are about the games that are being put out.
It's good.
So it's pretty neat. And I'll ask you guys this individually. So whoever feels the most passionate about it, go ahead and pop up. What are your top tools used in game design? And it could be software or
index cards. Not even joking. Good people. Those are my two. Joe, your turn.
Yeah, I definitely am low tech, and that's one that the process of designing this game has gotten me to a point where I'm significantly less low tech, but it definitely has been a lot of sort of hand cutting, handwriting. I don't know, eventually getting to the point that I could lay stuff out in PowerPoint or whatever, but definitely a lot of freeware and nonsense that I
well, I mean, it has to be. You're on a budget, right?
Yeah.
But okay, so both of you would say index cards are like number one tool for anybody in design, like wanting to sort of jump into design, which is good, because I think now where the industry is sitting or getting to, a lot of advice to new designers is, hey, pick up InDesign, pick up Photoshop, pick up, you know, use like crazy spreadsheets. And honestly, they do help you. But if you don't know anything about that, don't feel overwhelmed and don't feel like you have to. You could simply just have a bunch of little wooden pieces and index cards, and you could build your game from that. And honestly, in most cases, I wouldn't recommend going to the next stage of design before you feel comfortable in that sort of arena, like being able to sit down in 15 minutes and take a stack of index cards, some wooden pieces, and build a game. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, 100% agree.
So the two of you, we'll go one at a time. What's your favorite game mechanic?
Oh, you can't cop out and say worker placement with a twist.
Well, no, I mean, in a way you can, but you'd have to explain that twist.
Yeah, no, I know, for real. No, I guess something that is, I think worker placement is, I don't know why, but there's just something that kind of just draws me to it. Maybe it's just the scarcity aspect of, you got, one thing or a handful of things, and you've got to make these choices, and just
right.
condenses the, what do you want to say, just the pleasure you get out of seeing a decision, give you, that much more, gratifying kind of response.
Yeah.
Then again, if you're just doing worker placement, it gets boring. So it kind of either throwing in, timing, or kind of like the supply chain type stuff that Or's got going on. It's interesting.
Joe, what about you?
I think I've always sort of loved games that sort of like Puerto Rico or Glory to Rome, where they incorporate aspects where sort of you taking action gives everyone else also that opportunity to do that action.
Community action.
And I think it's very interesting, those kind of games where you have to kind of think about how everything that you're doing affects how everyone else is doing. But I think I also have to just admit that I've been playing, I don't know, I've been busy and kind of changed my focus lately, and have really started doing a lot more sort of short social deduction games. It's funny how I spent 6 years on a sort of heavy Euro game, and now I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm like, yeah, it's nice to just sit down like a Avalon or something.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go and sit down and play a trick-taking game tonight instead of, I don't know, this like 4 to 10 hour game I'm gonna play. I'm definitely feeling you on that one too. So this is my favorite question I ask, so it might not be yours. What is your guilty pleasure game?
Oh, jeez. Should I go? Because I'm humming and hawing on this.
I mean, yeah, it sounds like you have something interesting to say about that.
It's not guilty pleasure, but I'm nostalgia is just so important to me.
Right.
A lot of people, but like my first games were Avalon Hill games. So it's funny when you ask, like, what is your guilty pleasure? Because it's like these giant, massive, long games that you play with like 8 people.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I think Joe and we did. We played. I got some folks together and we played Age of Renaissance, which is like the spiritual successor to Advanced Civilization. I think Age of Renaissance, if you're familiar with it, all that Hill game. It is, it's big, it's burdensome, but I got so much joy out of just playing that with these guys, and I haven't played it for like 10 or 15 years.
It's funny you mention that, because most people, when I ask that question, they go to Monopoly or like these super light games that they're almost ashamed to tell people that they played. Avalon Hill, if you walked in and you were like, I only played Avalon Hill games, people would be like, oh, damn. we got a serious gamer in the room right now.
That's what I grew up on. So,
yeah. That's great, though. Joe, what about you?
Yeah, see, I feel like I'm saying nostalgia, but definitely very differently. I feel like I still sort of love going back to those old card games that I used to play with, like, when you go camping. So something like BS or Egyptian Rat Screw, or those.
Yeah.
No one knows. Like, if you find someone who knows the rules the same way that you used to play, you're like, yes, okay.
Right, because there's so many house rules to a lot of those card games that, like, if someone's like, wait, you do that too? Play for 10 hours.
Wow, I think I've also lost some friends where you play Egyptian Rat Screw with them, and they play different rules from you, and they're like, no, we can't be friends anymore.
Right. Or you have like that one friend, like maybe two friends that are super violent with each other in Egyptian. And they're like slapping really hard, and like they bruised fingers and hands, broken fingers sometimes.
Yep.
But no, yeah, absolutely. And that's really that's the core of that question, because some people might look at that like, but it really comes down to your passion and what you find in games. So this is a big one, honestly. We're actually getting near the questions and the questions here, but this is a big one. What would your tips be for new or existing designers? So based on your experience, what do you feel what kind of advice do you think you can impart to people?
I think the best thing is to find other designers and really, I've definitely met a lot of sort of new designers who think that they have to do it all themselves and who think that it's dangerous to like share their game with the world, that someone's going to steal their game. And in reality, I can't count the amount of ways that OR has been improved from other designers just freely giving advice and suggestions. And so, yeah, definitely finding a good group of people who are willing to sit down and play your game and give you feedback is so valuable and so worth kind of putting the risk out there of just showing your game to people.
Of course. And Jason?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's, find people or find, partner or co-designer or co-designers who you respect and who, complement, what you're trying to achieve, complement with an E, if you can kind of fill in each other's gaps and learn from each other and, kind of go from there. I think it's like the whole 1 + 1 = 10 sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So that's what I would say. The same thing. But, yeah.
And there's a lot of resources for people to find each other too. There's a lot of conventions, not only the large scale ones. There's so many regional board game conventions and fantasy conventions that usually in attendance are other game designers. I mean, you guys mentioned the one in Boston. I mean, I think I have like 4 or 5 that happen across the year here, local to my place, and outside of Scranton, which is not like a hopping area of the country. So. Yeah, there's definitely resources for you to do that. So what about future plans for you two? Do you guys have any additional plugs or thank yous that you want to go out, or any kind of shout outs that you want to do on this video?
Wow. Joe, you first.
Oh, God. I don't know. I always feel bad, but I definitely have taken kind of a slow road on designing new games. I'm planning to go to law school next year, so that's going to be a whole bag of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's definitely been a crazy ride. I think it's earlier this week or last week when we launched our Kickstarter and funded in 24 hours. It was kind of amazing to sort of see and hear from people who I had talked to at a convention 4 years ago and who were coming out to support the game. So I don't know. I really appreciate the board game.
Awesome.
A big shout out to all the fans who followed us over the years. Just such a long development cycle, and that's pretty cool to see people that you had one little conversation with a few years ago, and they remember you, which is great, and then you remember them, so that's even better.
Right. And then they're sitting there, with the hopes and expectations that they're going to be getting this game in the next couple. Well, I forget how long out they usually estimate. I'd say 6 months to a year, but they will get in their hands. And this thing that originally, this baby you guys born in your mind of this amazing game is going to be in the world, in the wild. Like, how do you feel about that? What is that? Where does that put you guys at this point, like mentally, like this labor of love that is actually now born into the world?
That's so cool. Oh, that's so cool. I mean, sentimentally, both my grandparents, got my grandmother, who's still alive and doing very well. But my grandfather kind of passed away over the cycle. They both, from such an early age, instilled in me just a love for games. We played card games, bridge, and tile games, everything. And so I just, whenever I see this, all I do is I think of, Grandpa,
That's
smiling. So that's all I want. And that's all, that makes me real happy.
That's actually pretty epic, Jason. I mean,
yeah.
Joe, what about you?
I mean the same.
You seem like you're in shock still, actually. Like, it's
yeah. I mean, it's one that I mean, I guess running your first Kickstarter, like doing the first Kickstarter for a game that you designed, I wasn't sure if anyone was actually going to come out. It's definitely a great feeling to already fund it. Apparently, while we were talking, we already hit the first stretch goal. So,
all right, I'm gonna pick that.
So, yeah, that's good. I'm excited.
But again, I mean, it seems like there's an element of I'm gonna pick on Joe for a second. It seems that there's an element that you just really can't believe it's even happening. Is that an accurate read?
Yeah. It's also just kind of nice to sort of feel like we've succeeded. It's been kind of just a idea for a really long time. Now it's definitely happening.
Yeah, I would definitely say, likely a big thank you goes out to Quick Simple Fun Games and Aetherus Games for partnering with you guys in this process. And the partnership has been pretty smooth, I'd imagine. You guys got along and been happy about that whole process. Yeah.
It's great to be backed by you always. That's very important.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, I want to thank you guys so much for joining us this evening for the interview. Best of luck through the rest of this campaign. I hope you guys fund all of your stretch goals. And I honestly, I wish you luck, Joe. I know you're in this like crossroad period right now because now you actually have a design, but you're also looking at law school, so I can appreciate that. Also, Jason, I know you're at a crossroad. You got a family, kid, so this is like crossroad time for you, and this little bit of success in board game design is an awesome thing. So I wish you guys the best of luck in any future endeavors, whether it be in game design or in. So thank you guys so much for joining us tonight.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.